the blockchain, you know. Yes, of course, there's a lot of attention on NFTs and cryptocurrencies, but I wish there would be more impetus on what it could do socially.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Lauren Cox. Today I'm here with Guillaume Buat-Ménard. Thank you, Guillaume. Guillaume is the Director of Digital Transformation at Flipside. So I'd love to learn a little bit about what Flipside do. Can you tell me what makes them different?
Flipside is a full-service digital agency based in London, and we build digital products and advise our clients on the best solutions for their needs, and cover multiple industries and formats, and most recently metaverse AR products. But by and large, our core business is websites, applications, and intranet.
Yeah, wonderful, excellent. And so, there's a really big trend, and it's not a trend, it's becoming reality, right? Where everyone is moving to become more net neutral, and there's a lot of big targets out there for 2030 from big technology companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, etc. So I was really wondering, how do agencies building websites help companies become net neutral on their digital properties?
It's a really good question. More often than not, as you said, we equate sustainability with data centers and energy usage and consumption, which is absolutely right. And I'm glad those companies are dealing with it. But I guess our view is we can all do a bit better. And if you think about it, the carbon footprint of an application, of a website, is not just its data centers and how it's powered, but also how much data goes and transfers across the internet and the World Wide Web to get to the users. It's also how fast or how easy the website is to use, i.e. how many clicks, how many pages a user or customer have to load before they find what they need or purchase an item. And also how much their computer or device, how much power their devices use in order to use that particular piece of technology, or indeed view, whatever it is they seek on their devices. So indeed there are a lot of things that we can do better, and we have a responsibility as agencies to advise our clients on how best to build those digital experiences to be the best possible for them and their customers, as well as thinking about the environment.
So if you are a company that wants to start looking at your carbon footprint and starting to reduce it, where would you say you would start on your digital property?
The good news is you can start anywhere. If you are considering rebuilding your application or maybe making some upgrades to your systems, a part of another project, then there are things you can consider from the data centers all the way to the user experience. So for instance, if you are re-looking at your IT strategy, we would always recommend to think about changing your hosting to a green hosting, and ideally a infrastructure as a service platform or platform as a service, at least one of the big hosting companies like Google, Amazon, and so on, because they have their net zero strategy set up, and you will only use capacity that is needed for yourself, rather than using your own data center and having sort of designing generally your ecosystem that is slightly over capacity, basically. Yeah. You then have the UX. As I said, how easy it is to use the website or the application. How is it easy to find something or to do the actions that you want your customers to do. There's the look and feel and design, images, size of images, font sizes. Think about a lot of websites use proprietary fonts. Yeah. Can you get away with using a system font and not download one? If not, can you use a web font and use a font that's already distributed on the Google network and so on? Yeah. So design as well is a primary concern in terms of using modern image formats like SVGs rather than JPEGs. Yeah. And all the way to coding. People forget that the browser, once you downloaded the web page, the browser has to do some work to display it, to maybe animate it and so on. Yeah. And that uses energy on your browser, on your laptop, and that creates consumption, uses battery of your computer or your phone. Yeah. And that, yet again, is a little bit of carbon used somewhere. So, you can start by changing your fonts and maybe reducing the size of your images, all the way to moving your infrastructure to the cloud.
So you also had a really interesting case study that we talked about with IMD, the business university that focused on reducing their carbon footprint, right? So would you be able to tell me a little bit about that project? I think you really explained it as more of a digital transformation for them as a whole. So I'd love to hear and for you to tell our audience about it.
Sure. Yeah, so we work with and we're still working with IMD, the Swiss-based business school. And they decided to, first of all, to migrate their property from a proprietary CMS to WordPress, based on our advice, because actually most of the work they do on the web is publishing. It is, I guess, trying to convert users towards buying courses and so on, but by and large, organizations are doing that for them. So a lot of it is about content, it's about inspiration and so on. And they ran their website on a proprietary CMS, on-premise, in their own data center and so on. And part of the project, whilst we rebuild their properties, move 10,000 pages and so on and so forth, was also to migrate from a tech stack to another, was to migrate to the cloud, lower their cost of ownership, but also making sure, as we talked about, capacity was managed in a better way rather than having to overspec the technology they had, and basically reduce their reliance on digital suppliers and their basically their IT footprint, as it were.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I didn't know is that in Switzerland, every business needs to be, every company, every factory needs to be net zero from the start, not into 2030, right now. And this is obviously, so sustainability and carbon footprint is extremely important to them. That was not part of the brief, but it is obviously something that they're very conscious about. So whilst we developed the new website, we also made sure, as well as everything, that the UX was correct, that less clicks as possible, performance, we improved the performance of their sites massively. We moved all the hosting to WP Engine across 4 different properties they've got online and so on. So consolidated the account, lower the cost of maintaining and so on and so forth, but move, of course, to a platform as a service, which is based also on the infrastructure as a service, as we talked about. And interestingly, at the end of the project, when we launched in September, what transpired is combining the hosting, the performance, the better imagery and so on, and better UX, that we reduced their carbon footprint by a factor of 3 from the original website, which not only is a great achievement, but it also means that now, comparing to all the other business schools in the world, if you look at the carbon footprint, they are beating them by a mile in terms of carbon footprint. So they take great pride as well in ensuring that they've won. They beat their own target, but they're also beating the competition. And believe me, business schools worldwide are very competitive.
I can only imagine. So earlier we were talking about UX design and how important that is. And so simplifying that more personalized experience, does that create a better sustainable outcome?
Absolutely. I guess if you look at it from the user's perspective and the footprint, if you deliver a personalized experience, if it's done well, obviously, not the usual retargeting that we all get on the internet, but if you provide a truly personalized experience based on explicit data, like maybe when you log in and your geographical or sort of income and so on, then in theory you have a shorter experience on the web. You've got a better targeted experience, which means you use less clicks, you find things quicker, or maybe you purchase things with one click, like Amazon does very well. And indeed, you'll reduce the amount of carbon that you create. Now, on its own, personalized experience is not green necessarily, but it contributes to a better use of people's time and thus less carbon emissions.
Wonderful. So there's a trend in web development, of course, using headless architecture and headless WordPress architecture like our Atlas product. But I was wondering how you see, with headless, we've seen a lot of improvement in page speed. And so do you think that that's also somewhat of a more sustainable option as people look into new architectures?
That's an interesting question. I would say that yes, it would contribute to it. It depends how it's architected, but theoretically you are correct, because With a headless solution, you are going to go back to the server just to load what's necessary. You may have some clever caching strategy, which means that in theory, you are only transporting the data that you need over the internet. And I guess if you are able with headless to have a better performance, again, better performance is generally a slower a smaller payload, and therefore reduce carbon footprint. Again, I wouldn't say by itself headless is more green, but it lends itself to a greener experience for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So we also talked a little bit at the beginning when you were talking about Flipside and what Flipside do with their clients, and they create, digital experiences through a broad range of things. You also mentioned apps and metaverse. Can you tell me what you're seeing from your clients, like how they're using those to create different communities in kind of internally, externally with their customers? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So interestingly, obviously, the pandemic has accelerated a lot of things in the industry, and particularly around, I would say, conferencing, events, meetups, gatherings, and so on. So the first thing we saw during the pandemic was that we developed our own product, our own sort of conference product, and it worked very well, not just for events, but also hybrid events, and it's now used, what we see is people use it, or companies certainly use it, to create gatherings of employees, but maybe provide an alternative to those that can't make it, or maybe that can't travel, or maybe cost conscious and so on. That is a very practical way of looking at it. What we're seeing more of now is obviously the buzz around the metaverse. And whilst there is some unhealthy fluff talk about what it is, what it isn't, there are some really interesting applications that we're actually building and selling to our clients. And one of them are ones that we use ourselves, like a virtual gathering across the world in companies where we can somewhat physically be in one place with a live video of our CEO, for instance, or take clients through our building, a virtual building, or have a virtual meeting. These are still anecdotal, but they are actually pretty good, and you can navigate around a space. So it's not sort of it's a more autonomous way of having a gathering.
So I really enjoy finishing an interview where you can tell me a little bit about what inspires you. So what trends or experiences are inspiring you at the moment? What gets you up in the morning?
The trends actually don't get me up in the morning because they've been around for a while. And what I'm interested in technology per se, but what I'm more interested in is how people get to work around, how technology can influence how people work together to do better things, right? So part of, my title is Director of Digital Transformation. That's a big word actually for a very small thing, which is, get people to work better, to know things better, to work better with one another. That's what it is really. And working around new product, it's not the technology itself making it easier. Why I get up in the morning is because when I work on digital products that are, say, a little bit more challenging than the bog standard website, you are having to adapt as a team with your client as well around that product, around that new thing that you're doing, and you get to know each other better and work better and generally improve how you work around digital products, right? So I think it elevates all of us, up there. Similarly with technologies like the blockchain, yes, of course, there's a lot of attention on NFTs and cryptocurrencies, but I wish there would be more impetus on what it could do socially and how it could democratize many things around the world, whether that is, insurance, whether it's hard drive space, whether it's voting, whether it's, obviously currencies and so on. And we seem to concentrate more on what could be sold to Facebook or Google rather than those things. But it will come. So what gets me in the morning is more what we can do with tech, sustainability, socially, and how it can help us, be better and work better together. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Guillaume. That was Guillaume Buat-Ménard from Flipside. So thank you so much.
Thank you.